Welcome back, everyone. Motor City Comic Con starting up for yet another time here, coming up this weekend up in Novi at the Suburban Collection Showplace. Joining me to talk more about his illustrious career in the Star Trek franchise, because you've all seen it before. I'm a Star Trek nerd as well. I'm at the convention with my uniform on. I'm honored to have a conversation here today with George Takei from the Star Trek franchise, officially known as now Captain Sulu, last time I checked, but also a leading advocate in the LGBT community. George, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So let's start off on the sci-fi side of things here. First off, you've been doing these cons for a long time. What is your favorite thing about going to these different cities, to the Comic Cons, and meeting the fans of Star Trek? 30 plus years for this franchise, and it's still going strong.
What do you mean 30 plus years? 58 years.
Okay, little off
Almost
there,
six decades. So we've been around for a long time, and we've been blessed by having a series that enjoyed this kind of popularity, and that popularity was made up of the fans. And so I see the conventions as an opportunity for me to say personally, face to face, thank you to the fans for the support that you've given us. And because of it, all of us, you guys and us, have lived long and prospered.
Absolutely love it. It's got second nature for that now. So getting into the franchise, tell me a little bit about your start, about being cast and recruited to be in the original TOS for Star Trek and then going all the way into the movies.
Well, I was a neophyte actor then when I got cast. I did have a good number of credits. My first feature film was back in 1918, I think. I was cast in an epic film on Alaska called Ice Palace, starring Richard Burton. And here I am, a theater student at UCLA, and I got plucked out of the school and put into my first feature film, ran for 3 months. All my scenes were with Richard Burton. The other leading man was Robert Ryan, and the female leads were Martha Heyer and Carolyn Jones. I doubt whether most of your listeners or viewers recognize those names, but Richard Burton, I know they recognize. Mm-hmm. He became a mega super international star, and all my scenes were with him. So, what a break for a young actor. And then Warner Brothers liked what I did on that film. And so they plugged me into all the TV series that they had, especially Hawaiian Eye. And so I had all those credits. And the casting director suggested my name to Gene Roddenberry. So he knew that I was a capable actor, at least, a theater student at UCLA, and I wound up with the role of Sulu in Star Trek, a path-breaking new role. It was an Asian American role, but in the 23rd century, spoke without an accent, as I did in the 20th century, and a crack Starfleet officer, the highest graduate from Starfleet Academy. And so, what a role in this optimistic view of our future, where the diversity of America come together and work as a team, and making that working together fascinating, engaging, enlightening, and at the same time, the best team that you can get in the galaxy. So that was a great opportunity. I just was over the moon, or over Mars and Jupiter.
Over the starbase by that point. So did you think when you were originally cast for Star Trek TOS that the franchise would go as long as it did, and continuing on even to where we're at all these years later to 2024?
Well, because I fancy myself a visionary, I said to myself, in the 21st century, in the year 2024, I will be going to a convention and talking about Star Trek to a gathering of Star Trek fans who were maybe even not even born at that time when we premiered back in 1966. So, yes, because I have a vision of the future, I knew that it would be a hit show.
I'm glad to hear it. So we're going to swing topics here. After your time in the franchise and everything, the movies are done. You came out of the closet as a gay man and are now a prominent fixture in the LGBT community. What were you thinking? And you were in the closet in probably one of the most instrumental times of your life in that franchise. Was it a hard thing to kind of just put that off to the side and it's like, I'm the actor, this is who I am? Do you think you wish you could have done it differently?
Well, you look like a guy who was maybe not born in 1966. You
No,
weren't.
no, I was not.
So you don't know American society back then. It was a, it wasn't, I was going to say, fiercely anti gay society. Gays didn't exist in American society. Uh, when I was a teenager, back in the 1950s, my hero was a young, dashing, blonde, good-looking a contract actor at Warner Brothers named Tab Hunter. I don't know whether that name registered or not, but he was the leading man in almost all the major budget films coming from Warner Brothers. Damn Yankee, Battle Cry, so forth. And I was smitten with him. Went out to see every one of his films. But when he was exposed as gay by one of the scandal sheets, he disappeared. We didn't hear about him anymore. That's the kind of society we lived in. You can be a money-making top star, box office star in the 1950s, but if it was revealed that you're gay, he wasn't cast anymore in those big budget films. And so that was a lesson to me when I was still a teenager, a young aspiring beginning actor. And so I learned very quickly, I can't be who I really am if I wanted to be an actor in Hollywood. And no producer would hire you then. So I was in a closet most of my adult life, 68 years before I came out. But all during the time that I was in a closet, some of these brave, bold, self-sacrificing people, here I was protecting my career, and these people were sacrificing their jobs, their careers, some even their families, because many were kicked out of their families and were advocating for equality for gays. And I felt very guilty living a parallel life, working as an actor in Hollywood, doing a series like Star Trek or other films. And here were these other people giving up everything and campaigning for a just cause. And so there's that guilt that stays with you. And that guilt stayed with me all the way, most of my adult life, until I was 68 years old, when, because of the activism of these brave people who had sacrificed everything, things were changing in America. Massachusetts in 2003 got marriage equality.
Yep.
And in 2005, our state legislature, the state Senate and the state assembly passed the marriage equality bill in California. So here we were, a great nation with Massachusetts having LGBTQ equality, marriage equality, and on the West Coast, California, and all across the nation, it was completely forbidden. Gays didn't exist. And I felt that if these politicians in Sacramento, our state capital, were willing to make that kind of commitment, I've got to be there too. And so I decided, okay, I've had a good enough career. I'm going to sacrifice, and I'll come out and advocate. And I came out for the first time in my life in the year 2005, and but that bill still hadn't become the law of the state. It needed the signature of our governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, an actor who, when he campaigned for the governor's office, campaigned by saying, "I'm from Hollywood. I've worked with gays and lesbians. Some of my friends are gays and lesbians." So with that kind of campaign, he led LGBTQ people to think that he was open to supporting marriage equality. But when the bill landed on his desk, he vetoed it. And that got me so angry, the hypocrite. I mean, campaigning by saying, "I'm a friend of LGBT people." And then when the bill that gave us equality, marriage equality, he vetoes it. And when the press asked him, why did you veto it? And he says, "I have no problem with gays, and some of my friends are, but I vetoed it." And people, the press would say, "Why?" "I have no problem with it, but I vetoed it." I mean, that kind of insane, asinine response. And I was so angry just to get even with Arnold Schwarzenegger, if not for marriage equality. I came out and blasted Schwarzenegger's hypocrisy. And as it turned out, it was hypocrisy, because that very time he was carrying on with his housekeeper under his wife's nose, Maria Shriver, and he has a son by his housekeeper. There's no place for hypocrisy in politics or American society. And that's when I came out, because I was so angry at Arnold Schwarzenegger. You'll never run for elective office in California again.
So now you've taken that, you've come out of the closet, you are now one of the leading advocates for the LGBT community. Tell me a little bit about some of the things you are doing to help support and further the LGBT community.
Well, I go on a lot of speaking engagements. The Human Rights Campaign, organization that advocates for LGBTQ equality, arranges these opportunities. I'll let you in on a secret that I would love to share with you fully. I have another book coming out next year in June about my closeted years. For the first time, I've never talked about my closeted years publicly, but I write about it in my new graphic memoir, and it's titled "It Rhymes with Takei." So I'm making the readers play that game. Name's Takei. Well, what rhymes with Takei? Well, some people who mispronounce my name, it's the most frequently mispronounced name. They call me George Takei, which is a legitimate Japanese word. It means expensive. And as a matter of fact, Gene Roddenberry, the producer of Star Trek, the creator of Star Trek, called me Takei when I first came in for the interview. And I told him it means expensive in Japanese. And he said, "Oh my goodness, a producer doesn't like to call an actor expensive. You're definitely Takei." But some people who pronounce Takai, thought it rhymed with "oh my."
Garrett, I was wondering if you were going to do that. I love it. Um, we're so excited to have you here up at Novi this weekend. Finally, the last question I've got for you. What's one thing you want to leave with our viewers about you, about your work in Star Trek, and about your advocacy for the LGBT community?
What's the one thing? What?
What's the one thing you'd like to leave with our viewers and leave an impart on our viewers about your time in Star Trek, being an advocate for the LGBT community? What's one final thing that you would like to share with our viewers today?
Well, be who you are. When I was a child, I was imprisoned by my own government, the United States, because Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Mm-hmm.
And we happen to look just like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. I mean, we're Americans. My grandparents was the immigrant generation, but we look like this, just
Mm-hmm.
like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. And this nation went crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have another graphic memoir that came out in 2022 called "They Called Us Enemy." Without any proof, any justification, the government sent soldiers out to arrest us. I mean, I just turned 5 years old in April, and in May, the soldiers came to our house, armed soldiers with shiny bayonets on them. They came, marched up our driveway, stomped up the front porch, and with their fists banged on the door and ordered our family out. 125,000 Japanese Americans on the West Coast, from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, were rounded up with no charge, no trial, no due process, which is the core part of our justice system.
Mm-hmm.
If you're arrested, you have the right to know why you're arrested, the charge, and then you have the right to challenge a charge in a court of law, where the opponent has to give the court the evidence of why they're charging us with whatever the facts, and then the lawyers fight it out, and if they win, we are arrested. But if they can't come up with any charge, then we're free. In our case, no charge, no trial, no due process, a simple arrest and imprisonment for 4 years during the war. And I was in a barbed wire prison camp with sentry towers, machine guns pointed at us. I mean, this is America. So what's been happening lately, this new president threatening the same sort of thing is possible because it happened to us, 80 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I testified in Congress in 1981, and we won because the government couldn't come up with any facts, any evidence. And so they apologized. President Ronald Reagan apologized, and he signed the Civil Liberties Act, which authorized a $20,000 payment to each living, surviving Japanese Americans for the imprisonment. And in my case, because I was a child, I decided I'm going to put it where it's going to be most useful, and donated a whole check to the Japanese American National Museum, which is the premier museum in the United States on that Japanese American experience. So I invite everybody to come to Los Angeles and visit the Japanese American National Museum. As a matter of fact, we're going to be opening an exhibit in Washington, D.C. At the Smithsonian this summer. And so You either come to Los Angeles
Hmm.
or Washington, D.C. and see this exhibit on what happened to Japanese Americans on the West Coast. It wasn't the other parts of the country, just the West Coast.
Hmm.
And
It's
the irony of this all is it was Hawaii that was bombed,
hmm
not California, not
hmm
Oregon, not Washington State, but a third of the population of Hawaii was made up of Japanese Americans. And if they took them out and put them in prison camps, the economy would collapse.
hmm
No consumer, no labor. And so the place where the bombing occurred, they didn't imprison Japanese Americans. The West Coast, where there was no bombing, they rounded all of us, 125,000 of us, and put us in barbed wire prison camps in some of the most hellish places in the country.
So
The,
so be who you are. The final words of it. I love it
be who
because
you are.
I love who you are. I love what you have done in your career in the Star Trek franchise, and especially being an advocate for the LGBT community. I can't
It's the
thank you
same
enough for
thing.
what you do.
The LGBTQ community too.
Hmm.
Why this prejudice against LGBTQ people? We're
Hmm.
part of the society. I mean,
Hmm.
we've gone through the same kind of experiences as an American. Uh,
Hmm.
as a matter of fact, Japanese Americans are the most heroic group that came out of the Second World War. They took people out of the barbarian prison, young men and young women, and put them in segregated units. The women were put into the WACs, which was mixed, but
Hmm.
of the soldiers, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team is the most decorated unit, bar none, that came out of the Second World War. And while their family, their parents, their brothers and sisters, their children were in American prison camps in some of the most desolate places, our family was sent to the farthest east of all the camps in the swamps of Arkansas. There were camps in the blistering hot desert of Arizona,
Hmm.
in Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, the most isolated, desolate, God-forsaken forsaken places. And yet, the people that went from behind those barbed wire fences fought heroically and sustaining incredible casualty rates. And many perished. And the American flag that covered their coffins were brought to their mothers or fathers or wives still behind American barbed wire fences. Most Americans don't know this chapter of American history.
No.
It's a shameful history,
Hmm.
but we need to know this history to know what is possible under
Hmm.
our democracy. And that's why I'm an activist. And LGBTQ people are the same thing.
Yeah.
We're like all Americans,
Hmm.
except for our orientation.
Hmm.
And Japanese Americans were like all Americans, except that we look like this.
Hmm.
The fact that we look like this, my parents could be walking down the sidewalk, and cars would drive up and yell, "Spy, saboteurs, go back where you came from." You know, that's the kind of America we live in. So
Hmm.
we need to know our history to prevent outrages like the imprisonment of innocent Americans who had nothing to do with Pearl Harbor and yet fought for this country heroically.
And
So,
let's hope history does not repeat itself.
absolutely. And I have a book on that. It's a bestseller called They Called Us Enemy. And I
Hmm.
think some people may be at the convention selling They Called Us Enemy. And I have a children's picture book, which also is a bestseller, called My Lost Freedom. Um, the cover has me, a cute little Japanese American boy with a raggedy stray dog that we adopted in camp and
I,
became my best friend.
Love it. Love it. So, George Takei, thanks so much for joining us today. George Takei, author, LGBTQ advocate, as well as the Star Trek franchise, betterly known at the end, Captain Sulu. George, thank you so much. It's an honor to talk to you today. I'm loving the history and everything, and I'm looking
And
forward to
and
seeing you in Novi.
and what's the book that's coming out this next summer?
It rhymes with Takei.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to be
And
looking
it's
for that
not
one
oh
for sure.
my.
And it's not, oh my. So, George, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.